Hi, everybody. This is Rob Galvin. Welcome to today's Dev Talk. Today we have Adam Blum, who's the product manager for RhoMobile Suite. Excited to have him on board today to talk about the next release of RhoMobile Suite 4.0. So, welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Rob. So today I want to tell you a little bit about what's coming in RhoMobile Suite 4.0. And then we'll talk about we've actually put out the beta, the first public beta, a couple days ago. And we'll talk about a few things that are in the beta. And then I'll show off one of the features in the beta, which is Windows Phone 8 support. So with that, um, let's talk about what the themes of the release are. Um, what we want to do is extend the lead that we have as a clean sheet of paper for enterprise mobility, basically taking the uh, best of breed modern development practices such as model view controller, object relational mappers, scaffolding, app generation, use of the cloud, and finally applying that to mobile application development. But we want to do it beyond just taking it to supporting Ruby. In the past, we supported Ruby for just about everything and JavaScript for most things or many things. Um, we definitely got feedback that there are occasions where people want to only use JavaScript to write their apps. And so across Row Elements and Roads and Row Connect, you'll see there's a theme of making sure that JavaScript is everywhere. Um, so in addition to JavaScript being everywhere, we want to have one standard clean set of APIs for all operating systems. Um, as we'll show you some examples of, in the past we had some APIs that were more tuned to MSI devices, Motorola Solutions devices, and other APIs that, while it still gave you multiple OSs, were more geared to consumer operating systems. And although there were differences in the APIs, there were probably a few too many APIs to learn. So we've unified that. We will still support the older APIs for some time, but we do have this common API set, and that is certainly one of the biggest things in the release. And we want to continue to be the industry leader in the number and type of devices and operating systems supported. So this includes things like support for Windows Phone 8, um, Windows 8 RT, Android Jelly Bean, Motorola MPA 3.0 devices, and we also want to continue to expand support for new Motorola devices and their capabilities, such as the MC40 and the VC70, and the many new Motorola enterprise devices that are coming out. Some people might ask, well, why 4.0? Didn't I just use Row Elements 2.2? And of course, we had Row Connect on 3.4. And so there was some confusion to have things at the 3.x level and the 2.x level. Roads, of course, was at the 3.4 level. So we've jumped a version to get everything unified. Everything will now be 4.0. But we also believe it's not artificial. We believe that the new API set really befits versioning it as number 4.0. It's along the theme of semantic versioning, where you do a major version release. I mean, this is a pretty major version release, and calling it 4.0 makes sense, we think. So the specific features that tie to these themes, again, the new common APIs with both JavaScript and Ruby on all devices, JavaScript APIs for all capabilities, so this goes beyond the just the common APIs, of course. It includes things like writing, um, uh, even over to Row Connect, writing source adapters in JavaScript. So JavaScript everywhere. Windows Phone 8 support in close concert with Microsoft, and we'll talk in more detail about what that really means. It's more than just building for Windows Phone 8. New devices such as VC70, MC40, MK3100, support for older MPA 1.0 and 1.5 devices, And then supporting all APIs with the stock Android browser. This is another key thing. Uh, we did support the stock browser, but you couldn't necessarily get to all the APIs. And so now when you're running on Android, even if it's on a Motorola device, we prefer that you use the stock Android browser. Um, uh, this is going to give you more commonality across, in your consumer apps across the various browsers and across the various operating systems. That's definitely something we'd like to see people out there test with the beta, because it's something we've worked to make sure got in very early. Um, so another thing that's worth sort of pointing out, people will ask, so what's the difference between roads and row elements? Um, this isn't new to 4.0. It's just maybe worth just over communicating this a little bit. Roads is the open source subset of row elements. It has the model view controller pattern, the object relational mapper, calls for device capabilities, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then it is worth highlighting the OS support. We have iOS, Android, Windows Phone 8, BlackBerry. We will not be supporting Windows Phone 7 in the future, although it's in there. We of course, have already dropped support for Symbian. Um, we also have support for automatic data encryption. Now, this is Roads, so if you need any of the following features, then you will want a row elements license. So it's things like automatic data encryption, NFC or RFID, barcode or signature capture, use of Motorola WebKit, and then even or support for Windows Mobile or WinCE. Um, that would drive you to use row elements. So just worth a little bit of extra clarification of that. Um, so we also have new features in RhoStudio. The part of the theme is that you can stay inside RhoStudio for everything. We also are providing autocomplete everywhere. We had limited abilities to do that. We had the Row Elements APIs and the Ruby APIs in with autocomplete, but not JavaScript and not Row Connect. So we're filling all of that in. In the app generation and scaffolding, we will have separate views for Windows Mobile. We will not generate the BlackBerry templates, um, but we have found that in the views for Windows Mobile, which will be done similar to the way the BlackBerry templates were, where you had index.bb.erb, you'll now have index.wm.erb, and we will not have the jQuery mobile generated by default. This is tied to our support for older devices, where using jQuery mobile can slow things down. So you can always add it later if you want, but the default will not did not generate the jQuery mobile scaffolding. And then we will give you compile time warnings for Row Elements API usage, so that you know if you're using something that requires a license. So Row Connect, I'm not going to be showing Row Connect specifically today. We'll be having follow-up sessions on that, but a lot of exciting new capabilities in Row Connect 4.0 as well. Basically, we have a model controller pattern. There's obviously no view because Row Connect doesn't have a user interface. It's just providing data, but it's separating the routing from the controller action. So if you think about the old source adapters, um, you can basically tie the routes that are invoked to make any source adapter method work from the source adapter itself. And this is more flexible for a lot of scenarios. It makes it easier to call RhoConnect with APIs from backend apps. But your source adapters will still work. So speaking of source adapters, we have added JavaScript source adapters to Ruby source adapters. We still, of course, support Ruby. Ruby has an amazingly impressive breadth of gems to do integration, and that is still the case. However, server-side JavaScript has really grown up due to the advent of things like Node.js, and so the idea that you would only want to do server-side integration like RhoConnect does with Ruby is probably no longer the case. There are advantages to using JavaScript. In some cases, mostly if that's the preferred developer tool set, and the set of libraries for integration is rapidly catching up to what's available on Ruby. We have a bunch of performance improvements. One of the performance improvements that will be there is the idea of uh, RhoConnect has either app partitions where all data is shared amongst everybody. You might use it for something like a product catalog or um, any information that every user would see. And then, of course, there's user partitions. There are cases where you might want to have a work group where everybody shares information or everybody in a role, and that can drastically improve the overall memory usage. Um, because as you may know from using RhoConnect, it's all sitting there in Redis memory, and it's very gives you very fast data access, but it does use quite a bit of memory. So custom partitions is an exciting new feature. Um, we've also done quite a bit of performance testing in this release. So there's a sizing calculator that we've had out there before. It has a number of uh, additional data points that you can use out on docs.rhomobile.com. We also have horizontal scaling where you can list more than one server. Uh, and as you have your server list, that will give you better performance. It lets you scale out the number of RhoConnect servers that you use. Um, so we also are expanding our third-party hosting options. We'll have both SAIC and EngineYard as a hoster for RhoConnect. We still love Heroku, which is part of Salesforce. We'll still support that. And the idea is that on RhoHub, when you say you want to deploy, you'll have other options beyond hosting on Heroku. We also have API bindings for Java and C#. Of course, we already had the ability to plug into a Java um, a Java Spring MVC application, but there are cases where you don't have a particular framework. You just have a backend Java app and you want to call out to RhoConnect. You can now do that. Those are actually out there on GitHub today. You can use them. And we also have C#. We will have C# bindings as well. And these will let you call even if you're not using a full-fledged app framework, you'll just be able to make API calls to the server to push your data there, to tell the server to sync, and to otherwise control what your RhoConnect server does. So RhoGallery, some of the exciting new features, I probably won't go through each of them here, is that we can use the volume purchasing plan. We will be able to use the volume purchasing plan, and we will also be open sourcing RhoGallery as an example RhoConnect and RhoElements app, and that will be done by the time that 4.0 is released. Okay, so now let's move on and talk about the common APIs. These are the common APIs that made the April beta, the beta that was up as of 2 days ago. So the common APIs are application. There used to be an app, there was something called application before and RhoApplication. Those have been merged. Another good example is barcode, where there used to be barcode, which was the consumer device API from the Rhodes heritage, and there was scanner, and now everything's in barcode. There will obviously be on certain platforms more options, the ability to support multiple scanners and multiple symbologies, but it's all within the barcode API. Another example of merging is merging camera and imager into camera. Card reader is the interface for the magstripe reader. This is implemented on MSI only, MSI devices only, but it would be if we supported other OSs with magstripe readers, or if people in the community wanted to contribute that, that would be the logical place to put it. Database, log, network, the rather awkwardly named async HTTP is now just a GET call under network. I think it's a lot cleaner. It's one of the few Rhodes APIs that I didn't think was well named. Sync engine is now called RhoConnect Client, which I think is a probably clearer name. And another example of things that were sort of uh, scattered all over the map was the old, there was a full screen signature capture, there was an inline signature capture where you didn't have to take up the whole screen, and there was a Motorola device specific signature capture API. And obviously, it did not need to be that complex. You could have all of those options within a single API, and that's now called signature. Um, there's a system API, very similar to the old one, although there were some calls in the generic API that have been merged into that. Um, and then WebView is very similar again to the WebView class in 2.2. So some caveats on this, uh, and highlighting of the differences. So we no longer will require a row elements license for JavaScript. So that's a big change. You can do that directly from roads now. Um, and this is based on feedback from the user community, and we listen to you. So hopefully today at the end you'll have a chance to give questions and give us feedback. We want to do the theme of row elements was it's just supposed to be the things that you need for enterprise apps, but there's plenty of consumer developers that wanted to use JavaScript. So we think we have a good answer for you. Um, uh, so we have the Ruby APIs, we have the JavaScript APIs, we have Windows Phone 8 support in the April beta. We have barcode for iOS and Android. We have camera only for iOS in the April beta. Um, most of these things we have everywhere, and this is the full set of things that you can use. So encourage you to start working with the April beta. Get on the Motorola Launchpad. Give us feedback. It is very early, so you can and will find issues. This is not something you should take to production, but we do want to give you a chance to get um, acclimated to this idea of very different APIs as soon as possible. So one caveat that you need to know about the JavaScript usage, you do need to include the following in your layout ERB file. And then as you call these things, you're going to call them with the row dot prefix. So for example, row dot barcode dot enable. So here's some examples of some of the flavor of the current API. So you'll call something like index, in your index method, perhaps on the controller. You'll enable something, and you'll just give it any callback. It's actually event handler. You'll give it any event handler method. Now there's a lot of ways to do callbacks. We're just showing one, right? So this is one where you say, okay, when barcode is enabled, then this controller action that's provided in this URL will be fired. But there are several ways. Rob's going to be doing a follow-up session where we talk about the myriad different ways of both invoking things and also installing callbacks. Speaking of the myriad different ways, if you're calling this from JavaScript, we talked about the stuff that you need to include in the previous line, but this would be how in JavaScript you enable scanner. You'll have this function. This function can be whatever you want, but you'll call row barcode enable, and then we're using this JavaScript anonymous function to do whatever arbitrary logic right here that we want to do to handle the callback. Okay, so just some more flavor of what we're doing here. Card reader, very similar. Here we're going to open the card reader, install the event handler, and then we would put more interesting business logic than just printing this out. But this is how you would handle the magstripe reader, and again, that is only for MSI devices. So network, similar thing in the index method. Of course, you could use whatever method you want in the controller. we're going to call detect connection, and then we're going to say as soon as you get the connection, um, and call this event handler. Again, this could be called whatever you want. Probably should be called something like connection event handler, not connection event. Um, but then you'll print out that you'll do whatever business logic you want. In this case, we just print out the parameters and we're going to say whether the connection was lost or restored. So hopefully that gives you a flavor. I'm not going to go through every API. Um, uh, in the May beta, the goal is that that will be the feature complete beta for what we release in June. And we do not know how far we run quite an agile shop. We don't know how far we will get through these. We will get through um, many of these APIs. We don't know the full scope yet. Um, so, but a key thing to remember is you always have the older APIs. So the common API is quite a big effort. We do want to make sure that we have a release for those of you that need other features like Windows Phone 8 and some of the new device support. So we'll see how far we get along this path, but this is what we plan to have released as far as the common APIs in May. We will, of course, support all of the old methods of, of doing all of these equivalents. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Windows Phone 8. It's one of the things I'm most excited about. Motorola has quite a large Microsoft using customer base. So many of you out there may be using Windows Phone 8 or planning on using enterprise devices that would be based around the Windows Phone operating system. So this is a pretty important release to get you there. Um, you will need to install Visual Studio 2012. You will need to edit RhoBuild YML to point to msbuild.exe. Um, and So let's go ahead and show you um, the running inside Visual Studio. I'm sorry, inside RhoStudio to do the build. The other thing to mention along this lines is we will be providing, before I jump over there, we will be providing a Visual Studio add-in later. The code is actually up now on GitHub, github.com/RhoMobile/VS plugin. On May 15th, I'll be doing a demo of that. Today, it just does the uh, project creation, model creation. It does not yet do build and run. By May 15th, it will do those, and we will, we'll show all of this inside Visual Studio as well. That's another very exciting feature. But in the meantime, let me go hop over to my VMware image. Okay, so I'm now inside RhoStudio, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And we will call this And so I'm now inside my project and I can create a new model. And we'll finish. And let's go inside my app. And let's go inside here and edit this to let's have the link to the product model. Okay, now I'm going to do a run, and let's go ahead and pick the correct project. Pick this one. And let's go ahead and pick Windows Phone. And that does mean Windows Phone 8, by the way. And let's go ahead and run this on the Rho simulator. So if you do run it and you see that it doesn't have MS Build, then you need to find your MS Build. By default, .NET Framework hides it under Windows, Microsoft SDKs, um, sorry, Windows, um, Microsoft SDKs, and you'll have the MS Build program will be there. And what you're going to do is just go to your RhoBuild YML. It is actually documented on Edge Docs, and you will be able to just fill in the location to that. So, um, so now I'm running this app. We'll say manage inventory, and I can say, okay, um, my brand new Windows Phone that I bought was a HTC Windows Phone 8X. Quite expensive without a plan. And so now I have this running here. So you know what? Let's go ahead and show that. You can see this is where I actually edited the. Let's go ahead and bring up that um, RhoBuild. So here's my RhoBuild. You can see I have my link to my Java JRE runtime, and this is where I edited to point to MS Build. So you may end up having to do that. And this is this particular directory may end up being hidden by your Windows 8 um, install. Okay, so that's running on Windows Phone 8, which is quite exciting. The other thing I mentioned is that we do have docs out on Edge Docs. First, I want to show the existing docs. Um, Rob Galvin, who's leading the call, actually put together this very nice matrix for the existing product, and you'll see that we have these are the things that run across all devices. But then, of course, you have these MSI-oriented devices, or APIs. So the goal, of course, is that we don't have two lists. It's a very nicely organized list, but we want to get away from the two lists. So now, if you go out to Edge Docs, you'll see that we have one list. Um, so if you go out here, you'll see that under mobile APIs now, you just have this very nice summary. This is the list um, for beta 1 for the first beta. It's actually called beta 11. And then you'll just have these single APIs. And of course, we will link at the bottom and we'll say we'll have links to the legacy APIs, but you won't have to navigate the two lists. Okay, so let me jump back to my slides. And let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
All right, so we are opened up for questions right now. If you can just type in your question via the GoToMeeting, we do have a few in there, Adam. So first question came from Chris. He's asking about what are the capabilities that we are supporting in Row Simulator, particularly Row Connect Client. Is that now working? What about some of the device
RhoConnect client is now working in Rho Simulator, but in general, the intention of Rho Simulator today is not to support um, device capabilities in the simulator. That is something that we will be doing in the future. It is a goal for 4.1. Please let us know. We won't be able to in that one. That will be a 3-month release. 4.1 that is. So we're not going to have time to do every single API, but we will do some of the top ones. We'll try to do Motorola barcode. We'll also do popular consumer device ones like GPS geolocation and camera. But we definitely want feedback on things that people would like to see in Rho Simulator. The other
Okay.
thing that we'll be doing in 4.1 is making Rho Simulator true WYSIWYG. So we will have the ability to have Motorola WebKit running in RhoSimulator for Windows Desktop. Today, that is running Qt WebKit, uh, and it's not similar enough. So that is something that we'll also be adding in 4.1 to RhoSimulator.
Okay, somebody else asked a question about is it available today for download? It is. Adam, can you see my screen? I'm trying to share my screen here.
Yeah, you should. Do I have to give you back control?
Nope. I have it. So
Okay, great.
yep. So it is available on Launchpad. I just want to spend a minute just talking about where to post questions, some content that you can find that's related specifically to beta. So when you go to Launchpad and you visit RhoMobile Suite, we have this pop up here that kind of talks about the new beta that's available. We've actually created this dedicated space where you can post specific questions for beta. And you can see on the left hand side here that we actually have some download links for Windows and Mac as well. So you can download the beta today. Just also wanted to point out some specific content for resources related to the beta. Here on the left, here's a nice posting from Darren, who's one of the engineers, that goes into great detail about some of the things that you should know about. So be sure, just as you're getting started, to check out some of these resources. Adam showed the documentation out on Edge Docs. Just want to spend another minute or so just talking about that. He mentioned some new ways to access the properties. I'm going to go into greater detail in a future webinar, but you can see some examples of this by clicking on the View Usage button. And you can see that we now have some new ways for setting and getting properties that you might find interesting. Okay, so be sure to check out these resources. The documentation is living documentation, so it is being updated daily. We will be adding some new developer guides that are focused around 4.0, so some migration guides, going into great detail on the new features, but primarily we have all of the new common APIs available now on Edge Docs. So you should be able to get access to that, and still continue to use Launchpad for the release product, but make sure you post your questions in the right space so we can answer them effectively. Okay. Let's see. Somebody else had a question. Are examples available using JavaScript as a controller?
Um, no, we're not using JavaScript as a controller. What we found in talking to a lot of JavaScript developers is that the primary method of JavaScript developers using MVC is through some of the more recently emerging sort of client side or browser side MVC packages like Backbone, Ember, Compound. And so what we will be adding uh, capabilities in a future release to allow JavaScript-oriented developers to use those client-side MVCs in their app versus doing the a direct analog for what we allow in the uh, as far as Ruby controllers today.
Okay, somebody else asked a question regarding you mentioned some new callback methods. So actually, there's some examples in Edge Docs. If you hit a method like barcode.enable that actually has a callback feature, Adam pointed out one mechanism using a action URL, right? So if you look at this, you can see that we've actually introduced a couple of new ways to do callbacks, and here's the kind of the previous current way that we've been using, callbacks, at least in Ruby, and now you can use similar ways for anonymous functions in Ruby and JavaScript, as well as just putting in a function. So where there's methods that have appropriate callbacks, you'll see some brief, a brief kind of code snippet to guide you on how to do that. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions. So while we're waiting for any other questions to come in, we will be setting up more frequent dev talks over the next couple of weeks. So we plan on having them pretty on a weekly schedule. And what we'll do is we'll hit individual new features or topics that we need to cover, and we have a lot of content to cover over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for some email announcements on the upcoming sessions that we'll be having. They will always be recorded and will be posted to Launchpad and made available for you to see on your time. Okay. Let's see. We did have another question that came in. Yes. Will this webinar be available for later viewing? Yes. This webinar is recorded like all of them, and will be available on Launchpad to review. And while we're doing that, let me just go back so you know where to get to the webinars, just in case you don't know, or Dev Talks, I think we're calling them nowadays. And let's go back to RhoMobile Suite on Launchpad here. And we have a nice videos button here. And you will see the most recent. And we're going to be reformatting this landing page, by the way. But for now, the most recent dev talks that we've done are here, and we'll be posting a special 4.0 series, so you can easily kind of go through a guided tour of the 4.0 features. Okay, next question came from Chris. Are there upgrade scripts for RhoElements projects that will create the new Windows Phone views for existing views?
The the new window. Well, we actually are not doing Windows Phone specific views. We're doing Windows Mobile specific views, mostly because on older Windows Mobile devices, they need to be more stripped down, sort of like the separate BlackBerry views are now. So there will not be um, Windows Phone specific views. The idea is that you really should just be able to use that same HTML5 oriented template across iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. The only sort of odd man out is uh, Windows Mobile. We have found that, especially for older devices, in most cases, uh, tailoring the view to that more low-end device makes sense.
Yeah, and so he followed on with that while you were talking, Adam. So if you
Sorry.
have an existing project and now we want to make a Windows Mobile view of that project, are we going to provide any way to do that? And
I was just sort of strip out the jQuery mobile. No, there's no
yeah,
plans to do that now. It's not exactly clear. What I think it really ends up becoming, if you have an existing app, I think the best approach is really to it is going to be sort of judiciously applying um, if you've decided, hey, I don't want to use jQuery mobile in this Windows mobile app, it's going to probably be stripping it down and judiciously applying JavaScript to it manually.
okay. I don't see any further questions. We'll just give another minute here. Okay. All right, so thanks for joining everybody today. So be sure again to post those beta questions to the special space we have on Launchpad for beta, as well as feedback on not only the product but also interested in your feedback on the documentation. We're doing some changes in terms of reorganizing the layout and providing new features for the documentation. So I'd love to get some feedback on that, as well as the product, and look forward to your comments. So stay tuned for the next coming announcements. We'll have a series of sessions over the next couple of weeks again to cover all the features in great detail. So thanks, Adam, for joining. You have any last minute comments?
Nope. Thanks for having me here, Rob.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.